super skimpy, like purple dress I had altered terribly. The outfit was horrendous. I remember thinking like, okay, baby hooker goes to her audition. One of those really proud moments as an actress that you're like, what am I doing with my life? I'm gonna book this anyway. So mad that I was going in for it. I get in, and then sure enough, it's like a room full of all these like model type chicks. I'm like, this is so stupid. Why am I here? Okay, I've gotta have a spin for this. It's not gonna cut it to just try and play this as it's written. One of my favorite movies is Election, Tracy Flick's character. The delusion that Reese Witherspoon and the conviction that she played this character with, I really admired. I need to go like Tracy Flick status with this and just pretend she is a genius and she's the smartest person in the room. That was what I stuck to. So I walked in and I said, have any questions? Which you should just say no. Yeah, I do. I have more of a statement. I was like, I think I just want to play her as like the smartest girl in the room. It would be kind of funny if she was like a genius. And they just kind of looked at me like there was like a poker face. How did I get the role of Lydia Martin? It's a fun story, actually. I was a senior in college. I had been acting, I think it was about 18 months. About 8 months prior, the first show I got in acting was this dark comedy for HBO. A very different vibe than Teen Wolf. Also kind of the snappy little villain, that's the one similarity, was I've never seen myself as the mean girl or the like sassy, I run shit, type teenager. So it was quite funny to me that I was getting a message externally from the rest of the world, or at least my industry, of, hey, this is what you portray to us. So I was like, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. But regardless, I got booked to start comedy, had like a lot of nudity in it with the adults. I was, thank God, part of the kids storyline, but I was a little nervous about that. Well, long story short, we shot our first season and we put it in the can at HBO, and then we got canceled before we aired. And so they just wasted an entire season of television. It's just like sucking the wind out of you that you worked so hard on this project and it had such talented people involved in it. How is it not going to be on television? I got to work with like veteran comedians, like Lily Tomlin and Leslie Jordan and Gary Cole. 8 months later, I then book my other show, Teen Wolf, as a series regular. It was October of 2009. I get a call. I remember the area, this intersection with like 6 different outlets in North Hollywood, or like West Toluca Lake. It's always the intersection I feel like a lot of wrecks happen because it's just very confusing. And I was taking one of my weird left-hand turns that there's like 3 options to take a left. And I'm taking this left, and I get a call from my agent. He said, hey, there's this new show, supernatural show, and MTV's doing it. Well, MTV is known for doing reality television. So I thought that was a little strange, but beggars could not be choosers is literally what I thought in my mind. But a job's a job. And then the second question he posed to me was, there's 2 characters to go out for. I said, well, read me the breakdowns, which is like the synopsis of what that person is. And one was the new girl in town, very nondescript aesthetically. And the other character, Lydia Sayers at the time, was her last name, but did not get cleared. I guess somebody in the world was named Lydia Sayers, so you have to get permission. And it was later changed to Martin. So Lydia Sayers was off the runways of Milan, was how she was described. My agent was named Chip at the time, and I was like, Chip, why would I ever be going out with that for that character? That's crazy. I want to go out for the new girl in town. So I went out for that role, and they said, we really liked her. We do have, the choices that we want. It was a girl in Canada and Crystal, and then I believe Crystal was the only one that ended up going to like the next round. But they said, we really like her, we're gonna bring her back. And that's like a really nice way of when you're dating someone of like, I'm never gonna call you again. It was a done deal in my mind. Teen Wolf, bye-bye. 2 months later, I get a call saying, hey, in the new year, we're gonna have you come back for another character. I thought, well, surely it can't be Lydia Sayers because they want like a model for that role. Cut to January, I am sitting in a physical room now. I remember getting locked out of all the MTV doors in Santa Monica because that's where their headquarters were. And I'm in this like super skimpy, like purple dress that like I had altered terribly. So it didn't even fit me correctly. Like, it was too short. So I put these pink tights underneath and it kept like riding up my butt and I kept like pulling it down, but the tights even made it more slippery. And these massive heels with tights on that were open-toed. Like the outfit was horrendous. I remember thinking like, okay, baby hooker goes to her audition. One of those really proud moments as an actress that you're like, what am I doing with my life? So mad that I was going in for it. I'm gonna book this anyway. After feeling humiliated of walking around Santa Monica Boulevard, looking like I was in Hollywood Boulevard, I get in and then sure enough, it's like a room full of all these like model type chicks. I'm like, this is so stupid. Why am I here? Okay, I've gotta have a spin for this. It's not gonna cut it to just try and play this as it's written. And one of my favorite movies is Election, Tracy Flick's character. The delusion that Reese Witherspoon and the conviction that she played this character with, I really admired. I need to go like Tracy Flick status with this and just pretend she is a genius and she's the smartest person in the room and no one can touch her, so that it's more an internalized thing about Lydia versus an external thing. that was what I stuck to. So I walked in and I said, have any questions? Which you should just say no. Yeah, I do. I have more of a statement. I was like, I think I just want to play her as like the smartest girl in the room. So if you wonder what I'm doing, like that's what I'm doing. It would be kind of funny if she was like a genius. And they just kind of looked at me like there was like a poker face. It was not good or bad. That's what I did it with and left the audition. I got a call a few hours later, not for Teen Wolf. It was actually for another show called Scoundrels. And it was this, I think like a New Zealand or Australian show that they were remaking. And I really liked the original of that show. And I was testing for one of the characters. I went in and I did that. I think about a week passes and I get this phone call. And I'm sitting here thinking like Scoundrels. It was gonna be a summer show. I think it only lasted one season and it was into the wind. So long story short, I went out for that show and that week later, I'm like, okay, this is the call I'm getting for Scoundrels. And I'll never forget getting out of my serving job, still in college, a senior in college. I pick up the phone, it's like 7 p.m. at night. I'm on the way home. When they're calling that late, when the office is closed and then there's a certain like tone in their voice, it's one of the best feelings professionally that you can get as an actor, at least for me. I was like, Scoundrels? And he goes, no. I'm like, what else could it be? There's nothing else I've gone out for. He's like, but Teen Wolf? What do you mean Teen Wolf? And he's like, yeah, you booked Lydia. There's no way I booked Lydia. I was like, that's weird. No, you booked Lydia. You've got to fly tomorrow. And that's typically how these things go. So to back up, before work that day, I went to the gym, was running on the treadmill, and I knew this guy named Tyler Hecklin that came in, also worked out at the same gym. And we were friends because our two best friends at the time dated for quite some time. We were even set up on a blind date. Another story for another time. And we were friends. I knew he had booked Teen Wolf already. So I thought, I was like, you're going to Atlanta? He's like, yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow. I was like, oh, have fun, dude. That's going to be great. He's like, it's crazy it's on MTV. I was like, it is crazy it's on MTV. Like, we didn't really think that MTV would take off with the scripted television, which it did. I remember that pilot season, everyone was like scratching their heads at MTV. Some people had like turned down the audition at MTV, which they probably shouldn't have turned down the auditions at that time. So it was definitely experimental territory. And Tyler Hecklin had done Road to Perdition. He had done Seventh Heaven. So he was a very well-oiled working actor at that point. I'd only done that one show and several guest spots kind of thing. I think I'd also done a Bring It On movie at that point. I go to that job, get out of the job, get the call, you're leaving tomorrow. And I think my next call after my mom was Tyler Hecklin. And he didn't answer. He was on like a flight at that point. I was like, yes, he's gonna be joining you in Atlanta. And I think he was as shocked as I was. We stayed at this place called the Artmore, which is no longer there in Atlanta. And we had the best time. And originally, the roles of Jackson and Lydia were hired as guest spots on what you call a pilot presentation. And a pilot presentation is not a full pilot. So we only shot like 2/3 of the pilot. And if it got picked up, we would go back and film the rest of the pilot. So this was like, I think end of January, 2010 that went into February. I remember meeting Colton and thinking, oh God, this guy's gonna be a handful in the lobby of the hotel. And he surpassed all my expectations of how funny he was. We immediately were best friends from the moment we spoke to each other. And so we kept powwowing at night, like, okay, do you think we're gonna get upgraded to series regulars? And I think we later found out they did it to save money, which is a very common theme at MTV. And that there was 4 series regulars and 2 guest spots. We were the 2 guest spots. But I think 4 or 5 days in of like the 8-day shoot or 10-day shoot, which was a long shoot for our pilot presentation, which ended up being a Teen Wolf theme of our shooting style, was we shot like a movie from day one. About halfway through, Jeff pulls, I think, Colton aside first and said, hey, if this does get picked up, would you like to be a series regular? And then he came back, giddy as all hell. And then I think a day later, I got the conversation with Jeff. And I couldn't believe what we had been powwowing actually came to fruition. That's not usually something that's on brand for me. And it happened. You don't forget a moment like that. And I remember seeing the scenes between Tyler and Dylan, Scott and Styles. Dylan had, I believe, acted a little bit maybe, or maybe I think like a webisode, and he was mostly like a YouTuber. And he was really ahead of his time of knowing how much YouTube is a really effective way of like a visual medium. In retrospect, I really admire Dylan for coming from YouTube. At the time, you're like, YouTube, what? And it totally makes sense now. But yeah, he was really funny on set, and I remember just feeling their chemistry. And then I remember feeling all of us in a room in a scene together. And I thought, maybe this is just complete bias, but I feel like there's some kind of energy here. It was the same energy that on the plane when I was reading the script, I felt that energy on the page. And when I could match the energy on the page from the writing to the cast, I thought, I wonder if I'm making this up in my brain. Like maybe this is just me. But I feel like there's something happening here. that I didn't have that feeling from the HBO show I had done years prior. And I didn't know what that meant because it was on MTV. Everyone was telling us that MTV was just so experimental. So it really felt like a short film of sorts, or like we were just, film school kids. We were also in a union called AFTRA, and AFTRA and SAG were separate at the time. And I remember like the sort of not so highbrow shows went to AFTRA, and I was like, oh no, we're gonna be AFTRA. That's a sign we're gonna get canceled. I was so scared from every step, I think because of the trauma of not having that show go forward, and how much it really takes, even as a newer actor, how much it takes for a show to get on the air and then stay on the air. And I know that even more so now, but even back then, it was something that lingered in my brain because of my experience from that first show. So May of 2010 is when we got picked up, and we weren't gonna shoot till October. And so that gave me a really lucky opportunity to be able to graduate college over the summer, which I did. But during the pilot presentation, I had one psychology professor who was not having it. And I would always show up first row. We went to all the office hours to make friends with all my professors, so that when I did have to go film something, they're like, okay, I get you. You're not hungover and partying. You're fine. So 99% of my professors were cool with it, except for this one. And that one made me go ask the executive producer to proctor my exam at what we call Video Village, because he wouldn't leave set. And he's like, well, you can sit down here and take your exam. Okay. So like one day when I wasn't working, I had to go into set, and Michael Thorne, who is now I think like the president of Fox, he had to email with my professor. Yeah, and he like proctored my exam. He like watched it. He's like, you're cheating? I was like, no. So just a bunch of writing essentially. But yeah, for like 2-3 hours, I had to sit there, and I think I got extra time. Like Michael gave me extra time, which was nice. But that was a really funny story. And then months later, he was like, we became pretty good friends, that professor. And that professor was one of those that like, she was an interesting person, but she had a bit of an ego about her and was like, no, I don't care what you're doing. You're never gonna miss my class and get away with it if there's a test. So they got to graduate college in the summer. And we then got to shoot the rest of the presentation to make it a full pilot in October of 2010. And then we get the news, well, you're not gonna be debuting till June of 2011. It's like, oh gosh, the same damn thing's gonna happen, guys. Like this is gonna get canceled and we're never gonna see the light of day. So when it actually rolled around, they sent us to Comic-Con before we aired in July of that summer. We got to go to the MTV Movie Awards before our show was out. I still didn't believe we were gonna actually air. And then in June of 2011, a year and a half since my first audition of Teen Wolf, Lydia got to see the light of day. And that's the story of Lydia Martin.